So all of it is just ridiculous, and none of it's documented. So if it's not documented, technically it didn't happen.
That's right. I always say that: crap in, crap out.
That's it. That's what we say. I quoted you the other day. I said it always says garbage in, garbage out. They did to the ATF agent Brian Higgins and Brian Albert both destroyed their cell phones on the same day, changing not only the cell phone carrier, but the cell phone number. And the ATF agent went to a military base in Cape Cod where he cracked his SIM card in half and threw his phone into 2 separate dumpsters the day before they're served with a preservation order to not destroy their phones.
Unbelievable.
And if it wasn't for the FBI, the defense wouldn't have any of this stuff because you just can't, the FBI doesn't need warrants or subpoenas. They can get whatever they want.
If they come back with nothing less than not guilty, that's a crime in itself. And
no tests were done by the lab, examinations, to see which way the force was applied to the lens to break it. There's microscopic examinations you do on the side of the broken plastic pieces and the glass to try to determine which way was the application of force that broke it and how much force. And no tests were done. I mean, I know the accident reconstruction experts that the FBI hired, they did some testing, but the lab should have been able to give you directionality of the force that broke the plastic lens of the, and how many impact sites? Was it just one, or were there multiple? And could somebody have, glass is broken, right? Because we see the video that she hit John O'Keefe's car, backing the vehicle up and cracked the lens. The father and her examine the lens and see that it's cracked, but it's not broken. It's not in pieces, it's cracked. Okay, so then how did the rest of the breakage occur? All right, are there multiple impact sites, and is it coming from outward, inward towards the housing of the light, or did after the first piece break, did somebody reach in and start snapping pieces off the lens outward? That directionality can be found, and it wasn't done here. Was the lens or any part of it dusted for fingerprints, swabbed for DNA? If you're going to commit a cover-up, if you're going to commit tampering with evidence, you're probably going to be wearing gloves, but at least those things should have been done. And so far, I haven't seen it. I'm looking through all the testimony, and I haven't seen where the lens of that taillight was examined for fingerprints or I know definitely I didn't see anything that's saying we did any directionality of force examinations. They did see if there was multiple impact sites on the lens. All right, because the lens just doesn't break into all these pieces like this without force being applied to multiple areas of the lens.
Doesn't just explode when it hits a guy's arm? Because that's
but look how large these pieces were. Okay, and forget about.
And this is an investigation for a fellow police officer.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Could you imagine? But I know it doesn't matter. But I have to say this: could you imagine what a regular person would get out of these people? They're doing this for a police officer. I mean, of course, we have that whole cover-up and conspiracy situation that we know has gone on here. Something is not right.
Let me just say this. When it comes to forensics and processing crime scenes, there's no difference if the victim is a police officer or if the victim is an average Joe citizen, to me. I mean, it hurts me more
how it should be.
Because I know the person is a cop, and it hurts me more because I know that person was out there doing God's work and trying to protect that community when they may or may not. But this is an off-duty incident. And that's another thing. Excessive alcohol, the type A personalities of police officers, excessive testosterone, all of these things together does not bode well for what happens later. Okay. Yeah. I've seen it time and time again. Too much drinking, too much testosterone, too much I'm a cop, I'm above the law type attitude, and it does not end well.
They did find John O'Keefe's touch DNA on one of the taillight pieces, not on
the I saw that testimony. And the hair, the magical hair that stayed on the side of the vehicle, the one hair as they're driving through all of this and towing the vehicle. Yeah, I got that, the touch DNA. Which is meaningless because he has access to the vehicle.
Right.
This is such a toxic case. My heart goes out to this town, okay? Because it's tearing the town apart. It's tearing people apart. I mean, people are doing some really stupid things like doxing the pathologist from San Bernardino, and now death threats are coming to them. And this is ridiculous, folks. This is ridiculous. You know, it's one thing. It's one thing to have an opinion about how you feel, guilty or not guilty. That's fine, but do it respectfully. And agree to respectfully disagree about what you're doing here. You're so passionate about your belief of guilty and not guilty that you're willing to assault or you're willing to hurt somebody else who doesn't believe what you believe. How crazy is that?
Yeah.
And then you have to have some self-reflection, people, if you're doing something like that. There's something wrong with you. None of this is reasonable. None of these stories, none of these conversations, none of the phone records, none of the butt dials. None of this stuff is reasonable. It makes no sense. Think about it. What does Occam's razor tell us, right? The simplest explanation tends to be to the truth. So in order to wiggle your way out of all of these suspicious things, you have to have this totally convoluted story. And that's what they got in testimony. These totally convoluted stories. Oh, these are butt dials, you know. I didn't have a 26-second conversation with anybody. It was just a butt dial. And all of these things, I swear, some of the stuff was so obviously to me perjured. I don't know how the prosecutor allowed the testimony to go on.
Yeah.
I don't know. You telling me before the testimony that the prosecutor didn't know these things? There was conflicts here with what they're saying and what the digital and forensic evidence is saying.
How about did you see the inverted video at the Sally Port?
Well, that's another thing. The inverted video, someone had to manipulate the timestamp and date information, because if you invert the video, that gets inverted too. But it wasn't. Just the video was inverted. So somebody had to cut and paste that out of the inverted video and then put it back in to make it appear normal, so that you could read it normal and it wasn't inverted. So who did that? Who edited that?
They claimed that that's the way that camera recorded inside the Sally Port. Do you believe that?
No, I don't believe that. Did not believe that.
And then there's so it looked like the guy was, whoever drove the car into the Sally Port, it looked like he was getting out of the passenger side, but it was really the driver's side. I could not even wrap my brain around flipping that around in my head. Well,
I mean, the cell phones do it all the time when you take a selfie. Right? When you take a selfie, you're basically getting an inverted image, or you're doing a selfie video. It's inverted. This whole case is crazy. The DA should not have gone forward with this case.
Can this case be reopened and reinvestigated at all? Justice needs to be served.
Attorney General.
It's too late?
Well, the feds can do their own investigation. There could be a civil rights violation thing going on here, just like they did with Rodney King. After those officers were acquitted, then the feds came in and moved in that direction. So the feds can do that, but because of double jeopardy, and you're the lawyer, she is not convicted. She cannot be retried for this if she's found not guilty.
Right.
But if the investigation was botched and they had the wrong defendant, okay, the investigation can still be opened and still investigated. There's no statutes of limitation on a homicide, on a murder.
So it's not too late with all the forensic evidence that was totally botched and mishandled, to
a lot of that is gone. A lot of that's done.
That ship sailed.
There's a lot more digital evidence out there. There's a lot of texting and emails and so forth that maybe can get a second look. It could be another bite at that apple. Maybe there's still ways of going up and down. Usually these security cameras, they overwrite after they get a certain amount of data on them. And so that might be lost. Then again, some of the stuff may be backed up on clouds, and maybe we can get into those cloud data and see if any of these videos, home security cameras, captures the movement of the Lexus and so forth. We know the Lexus, we know her phone hooked up to John's Wi-Fi at a certain time, so that disproves some testimony that was given. Again, how did the prosecutor not know that phone connected to that Wi-Fi at the time that one of his witnesses is saying she saw that vehicle in front of her house?
Right. So in his opening statement, he says that she backed into him 60 feet at 24.2 miles an hour based on these key cycle things. I don't know if you heard about key cycles.
Which he botched the key cycles, and there's missing key cycles. So what happened?
Okay, wait, you can explain that in a second. So that's what so in his opening statement, he says it happened at 12:45. Then as the testimony goes on and it's proven that she connects to his Wi-Fi at 12:36, Now, all of a sudden, it can't happen at 12:45. He's got to back it up and make it happen at 12:30, which doesn't line up with Jen McCabe's text messages saying, "Are you here? Pull up behind me," which happened after that at like 12:40. So the whole thing is so fakakta that if a jury doesn't believe that there was a car accident at all, they can't convict on anything. So I don't know what these my brain turns to mush when they started talking about these key cycles. So can you explain to us a little bit about what that is and if there's any significance to that?
The significance is the times. That's the significant part. I mean, and trying to use the key cycle to determine the speed of the vehicle. He has no business doing any of this because he doesn't know basic physics. He doesn't know basic math. He couldn't define the basic concepts here. It's like he was reading a book and, oh, that's what this means. Oh, I could use this. And I don't understand how he's allowed to do accident reconstruction. And I understand this is his third testimony.
I don't even know. Trooper Paul.
He should not have been made an expert by the judge, in my opinion. He's unqualified and he doesn't have the experience. Okay.
Listen, we're all empathetic here, right? But yeah. I don't feel sorry for him because he should have been prepared. I mean, as a human being, I feel sorry for him. But as a professional, I'm embarrassed for him because you do not come into a major case like this and not have knowledge. When the defense crossed him, they made him look like a complete fool. It was so cringe that, like, I said to myself, this guy should either resign or just go back to, maybe desk duty. Because it's ridiculous.
When you do any kind of reconstruction work, whether it's post-blast investigation, fire investigation, bloodstain pattern analysis, shooting reconstruction, trajectories, and so forth, you need to establish a panel of experts to review the work that was done in the case to ensure that it's done correctly. And it's got to be an odd number of experts, so 3 or 5, so there can never be a split, even split on. And they need to review it as a means of quality control and quality assurance and review those findings. Did he seek assistance from any other accident reconstructions to peer review his work? No, didn't do any of that. It's just totally unprofessional.
It was almost like he was a patsy too,
He might have been bullied into doing this, or I've seen prosecutors, assistant district attorneys, actually have people like this testify, convince them that they know what they're talking about, and have them testify to things they really shouldn't be testifying to.
Lacey Lace wants to know what happened to all the blood John O'Keefe lost from his head wound. No one has said anything about that. All they got was 3 drops. Yeah.
That's another thing too. Raccoon eyes. So we normally see that with a lot of headshot wounds from ballistics, and it also can be created through blunt force trauma as well. So the physics of this, again, the physics, we're made up of mostly water, right? Our bodies is made up of mostly water and fluids, right? So when an impact to the head like that, it'll send like a shock wave through the brain, impact the bone, and then bounce back and come towards the eyes. All right, and break the orbital bone there, and then the eyes fill up with blood. Okay, so that's typically how something like that occurs, and I believe the pathologist testified to that in the trial, and she was spot on. But again, she made this a CUPI, and I know, Madeline, you spoke about that.
Tell us what CUPI stands for.
Causes undetermined, pending investigation. She does not know.
Can't say manner of death.
Right, she can't say it and that's why she left it up for the investigators to figure this out. She does see the blunt force trauma. She does see this, and she testified that it could be associated with a beating.
Yeah.
Okay. I 2 defense experts at the end. The 2 doctors came in and just, blew this whole case out of the water for me. Just that. There was a lot of reasonable doubt throughout the testimony, but when they came in at the end, game over.
I thought so too.
It was not done by a vehicle.
The doctor who came in for the Commonwealth who examined his brain said that there were injuries to this side, temple injuries, like to each side of the brain, and then all of the frontal lobe injuries too. In addition to that, blow to the back of the head that caused the skull fractures to radiate out. Which, I'm not a medical expert. I'm just a legal expert who's handled medical cases for my entire career. It seems to me like those are could be caused by a punch to each side of the head and to the whole front of the head.
Or hit with a pipe, or hit with something that's
something like a baseball bat from behind.
Baseball bat, hockey.
Hit in the front, and then fell down and hit his head on the concrete floor. I've seen those.
You take a pop, you take a pop to the side to the face, you could get knocked out. One punch, and then back.
How many of these cases have we seen on YouTube of, random strangers, playing the knockout game, just walking up to somebody unbeknownst on the sidewalk, cold cock them, and that person falls back, hits their head on the ground, DOA.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, it wasn't the punch that killed them. It was the punch that knocked them down, and it was the impact on the concrete that killed them. Right, on the sidewalk, on the curb, or whatever the case may be, the street, okay, that hard surface, all right, and the bleeding that occurs in the brain, and all the trauma and so forth. I keep thinking about this when I hear it. It's not the crime, it's the cover-up. Because if, in fact, this altercation, because it looked like from the bar that this altercation started in the bar, and they goaded him, John, into going to the house, and then it continued at the house, all right? And it led to this.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. They had that video from day 2.
I'll take this comment that you have
take
highlighted.
That.
Okay,
take that,
and Ed, you could jump on it as well. Okay, it says, Dream Thinker, how hard would it be to speak like this if you were not retired and this was happening in your department? Well, many have spoke out within our department, and many have spoke up about injustices or corruption. And there's always backlash. You get backlash from members of the service in the department. You get labeled as a rat. I'm being as real as I can with this answer. But during the course of my 20 years in the police department, I was so lucky that I never saw corruption. But if I did, I would be the first to report it. And I know that it would be repercussions. So yes, it would be hard. But if you have a very strong, and you're a person who wants to be able to sleep comfortably at night, then you have an obligation to, if you see something that's not right or corruption, and report it.
Well, I practice forensics, so I practice science, and it is what it is. It's either right or it's wrong, and I let the chips fall where they may. So I don't give two rats' asses what some other cop who may think about my interpretation of the science from the crime scene that I just investigated and conducted experiments, or whatever the case may be. If I see that we as law enforcement in the investigations that I'm conducting did something wrong in that investigation, I'm not covering it up.
No way.
It's in my report. Okay?
Ed and I have spoke about this quite a bit privately, things that, possible situations that have happened. And, I was lucky. Ed had a couple that he had to speak up on. But the bottom line is if you're a good person, you're going to do it. And we're all human beings. Some people aren't good people. And the people that don't speak up are not good.
Isn't it true that nobody hates a dirty cop more than a good cop?
100%.
That's correct. First of all, there's cops, and then there's criminals that wear the uniform from time to time.
Love that.
Okay? So once you cross that line, you're no longer a cop. I don't care if you're still wearing the uniform and you haven't been caught yet. You're a criminal. Or depending on what you did, okay, but no one despises a bad cop worse than me. Remember, I'm third generation NYPD, and my son and my nephews are fourth generation. This has been in my family since 1920 with my grandfather. Okay, wow. We don't tolerate this shit.
Exactly.